This is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I recently read this book and it's extremely unique because it's by Marcus Aurelius, he was emperor of Rome for 19 years, and this wasn't a book that he meant to be published. It wasn't anything for anybody else to see, but rather it was just his personal diaries. And so it doesn't really have any sort of commonalities, any themes throughout the book, and it's not like a story or anything, but it's rather just like these reminders, because he was a stoic philosopher. He was raised by like the greatest minds at the time and everything to be a ruler, and he was a great ruler. He was loved by all his people, and that's not really the case a lot of times when you're a dictator and a ruler and everything, a tyrant. But he wasn't that. He was really well respected and loved by his people. He led Rome through two great wars, sicknesses, plagues, all these economic depressions, all kinds of things. And these journals that he writes to himself are just to remind himself of how he should live, how he should deal with people in the world and everything. And the great knowledge found in his book just shows why he's one of the greatest stoic philosophers. And everything is sort of relates to nowadays, even though this book was written over 2,000 years ago, which is another extremely unique part of it. It still relates to this day. Like, one of the most prominent pieces comes from book 5, where he talks about how hard it is for him to get out of bed in the morning. And he asks himself, well, is this what we're made for, just to lie under our bedclothes and stay warm? And he answers, obviously not, that we have to go out and do our work. But it's very funny how, like, the problems that we face today sometimes is wanting to stay in bed, and this idea of comfort and everything still plagued the Roman emperor 2,000 years ago. And so you see throughout this book that a lot of these things, like, really just still hold true to this day. And it's not really like a in-depth summary, or it's not really like an in-depth, like, look at this book, but there's like sort of like a few like takeaways that I want to talk about that I got from this book and that are pretty interesting. All right, the first sort of theme is the evil that men do can only harm us if we do evil back. And he starts book 2 off with saying, begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with the meddling, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial. All these things happen to them by reasons of their ignorance of what is good and evil. And he says that they don't know what's good and evil, but it's our duty to go throughout the day with compassion, to understand that they have faults, but understand also, before we point fingers and judge and everybody, that we have faults too. We have a great many faults, and this is something that we have to remember. And when we see people doing bad, it's our duty to just point it out to them and try to correct them of their errors. But if they don't, then this can do no harm to you, so don't worry about it. Like, it's not something that we can control. And he says also that we are social creatures, which we are, and we're all meant to live in harmony, and that what injures a hive injures a bee. The best revenge is to not be like that. You don't fight back, you don't do all these awful things, you simply point it out and try to help them. And it's really no skin off your back if they don't change their ways. They can only harm us if we allow ourselves to be harmed and hurt by the things that they say. Like, you could think when people say mean things to you or just don't understand you or anything like this, like, it's really nothing that you can control, and you can simply point it out to them. And if they don't listen, then drop it. Their evil can do no harm upon you. Other people's mistakes, you remind themselves, should be left to their makers. So just mind your business. This holds true even to this day, that we should be good citizens, help point out others' misdeeds. But if they don't listen, then it's nothing that we should be upset about, something we should do harm upon our brothers and sisters for, because they are, he says, our brothers and sisters. Like, God made this world for all of us to live within accordance to each other and live in nature like we are made for each other. So stop judging, remember your own faults, and just be compassionate. The second theme here is the unworthiness in the pursuit of fame and desires. And this is something he talks about a lot, and it's like something that may relate to him in his world of all that more, but it still relates to us. If you think about it, yeah, you're not waking up in the morning thinking, how am I going to pursue fame and praise and desire and all these different things. But really, when you think about the intentions behind a lot of things, you can find yourself to be pursuing these unworthy desires. He says that we are all, us and our actions are like grains of sand falling on top of one another. All these famous people will soon be forgotten. all their followers will be forgotten, and there's no fulfillment in that life. He says we are all equalized by death. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, who loves you, who doesn't love you. We all became the same. We all become the same under death. And in a similar way, he says that seeking praise is an empty cause as well, because the beauty of an object, the beauty of a person doesn't come from the praise, doesn't come from what others believe about it. It comes from that object itself. And seeking praise does nothing, it changes nothing. And so it's not something you should rely on. It's an empty pursuit. And then in a similar way, when we seek praise for the good deeds that we do, the actions or this or that, he says this is foolish, because this is our duty to society, this is our duty to God and to our brothers and sisters, that we go out and do these good deeds. So to stop seeking praise for them, because it's what we're put on this earth to do. Theme 3, the universe has changed. This is one of my favorite themes, and it's also one of his like strongest points and favorite things like to talk about, because he finds it absolutely ridiculous that anybody would sort of fear and be uncomfortable with the change, because it is like it's the natural way of the world and it's how everything happens. He's like, ask yourself what in your life has taken place like without change. And he says, is any man afraid of change? What can take place without change? What then is more pleasing and suitable to the universal nature? And can't one take a bath unless the wood undergoes a change? And can't one be nourished unless the food undergoes a change? And can anything that is useful be accomplished without change? I feel like it's something that we hear a lot, but it's like, it's so true even now, like as it was back then. Everything we've ever gotten, like everything we've accomplished and like our lives we have now have come through change. Like think about, so like for us, like we're scared to go to college, for high school to be over. Say we're like counting down the days till like our best friend goes to college or something, and we like don't see them again. Like it's a scary thought. Like it is quite like unnerving, but like in the same way, like think about how you got that best friend and how you started high school and how change, like how moving into these different phases of our lives is essential, although scary. And like we think about what we're losing, but we don't think about like the hidden opportunities that we don't know about and everything that's to come for us. All we know is that we are going to lose something, but we have to be open to the universal nature of change and what God has in plan for us. And my dad came out here, Dad, so tell me about like, were you ever like scared to go to college, or scared to like move out of your mom's house, or scared to start a new job or fail at a job or something like that?
All of the above, definitely, yes.
Because you don't think about like the opportunities that have in store. You think about like what you're losing rather than like what's to gain from it and all the new opportunities and people you'll meet.
I think you're right. I mean, you're just getting out of your comfort zone. You just it's never fun stepping out of your comfort zone.
That's right. And then another one of the common themes that Marcus Aurelius talks about is that of our mortality, and he talks about how if you have a short life, in essence, you're not really losing anything more than the person who lives the old life, because the only thing that you have is the present moment, like what you're living right now. That's all we have is this current second. Like nothing is ever promised. So it's sort of an interesting thought to think about that. Not losing anything more when you die than you will have lost in the past 5 minutes. So he talks about how important it is just to like seize the moment and just live your life and act now and act with the sort of like urgency in everything you do. Any thoughts, Dad?
I mean, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that either.
I guess I always think of life as I'm potentially going to get old one day, so I'm going to try to pace it. I think you still need to pace it at some point, you know, just like not live every day like it's your last day, because...
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to sort of think of the future, but in the same way, like, be very urgent about it, because we are really guaranteed nothing.
We are. Enjoy the moment.
Yep. All right, so the fourth theory for meditations is that problems are created in our mind. And this is like a very like reoccurring theme throughout the book, and how he talks about how it's our troublesome perception of events that causes all the turmoil and unhappiness in this versus the actual events themselves. And it really does seem like a pretty basic like theme and topic, but once you like start to think about it and you like try to implement it, like even starting with like small things, you realize, as he says, that we have a lot more control over our like our perceptions than we think we do, and that we give credit to ourselves for. And one of his most famous quotes from Meditations is, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." And it really does seem like such a basic thing, but I challenge you to try this in like the simple events and like times throughout the day. Like, we really do have so much control over the perception of things. So work on that. And he talks about how we bring anxiety upon ourselves when we create it in our mind, because we have so much more control over our mind than we think. He says, "Let not future things disturb you, for you will come to them if it shall be necessary, having with you the reason for which you use now in the present." And he's saying, like, why worry when you're going to be the same self? Like, you're going to have the same set of reasons and principles and values and like skills that you have now, so why do you worry? And the way that this kind of applies to me in my own life is like, I run track, and so I never get too nervous for races, because I know that it's just going to be the same thing that I do in practice all the time, and that's just pushing myself. And I've raced before, and that strength, it's not like it goes away within you. And in a similar way with ACT, like, you're going to be able to push yourself mentally however hard you can push yourself now. So it's like, why worry? It's just going to be what it is. In a similar way around all these events that we can't control, how through events we must keep our color as an emerald keeps its color through all things. And this sort of color is being our values and principles that we hold for ourselves and that we've established for ourselves. Like, we have control over how we deal with all these things, and we must stay true to ourselves through all things, and through all these bad things that happen to you, all these like shortcomings, whatever, even like the smaller stuff, like people being mean to you, how, like, whatever it is, that we have control over this. And this is like one of the biggest points in like stoicism and this like meditations as a whole, is like this idea that you cannot be harmed by anything because you are the one controlling your own mind. Another cool theme around the same topic of these events that we can control is sort of how the obstacle becomes the way. He writes, "Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding on our intentions or dispositions, because we can accommodate and adapt. The mind adapts and connects to its own purposes the obstacles in our way." And so he's saying how nothing can affect our disposition and our intentions that we have. So as long as we stay true to these, then the obstacle sort of becomes the way, and it becomes the journey, because he says that everything is according to nature, so everything's going to be as it should be. All we can do is keep our color and stay true to our intentions, stay true to who we are, and these sort of opportunities come from these struggles and different things that we don't see. Our mind will fold all these events to our purpose. So although there may be bad events, bad things that happen, we can't control this. Yes, there are obstacles, but through them we find the way, through them we learn, through them we grow, and we find our proper path through them. So he says, stay true and remember that the obstacle is the way. The fifth theme is that our rational mind is our greatest asset, which sort of just encompasses like everything else that I've talked about. But he says that this ability is what sets us apart from animals, and this ability is what leads us to begin to understand the natural world and learn to accept life's events, and learn to understand that we have complete control over our opinions, and that our mind only suffers when we create desires for specific outcomes in life. He writes that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And this is just a great quote to sort of sum up everything about the book, and just stoicism in general, really. One of my favorite things to remember, like, from this book, like, sort of a takeaway, is just that in one way or another, like, everything is sort of as it should be, and this helps me to just like see the bigger picture in things, and to be more accepting and not so fighting of life and its events that come at us, and to not like create my own reality, but just to embrace God's reality, which is the actual reality, and to just understand that like we are all made for each other. Everything that is going on is in one way or another, it's the natural way of the world, and it's just how it should be. And this doesn't mean to like not hold true to who you are and to not like act. It's not saying that, but it's just saying that like these things that are outside of our control are outside of our control. Lastly, some of the deepest lessons in meditations relate to our shortness of life and how death is approaching us all, and that we must all remember this, that life is short, death is coming, and so we have to live fully. None of these are new ideas, and it just relates to how, like, all of this is very relevant still to this day, and that not a whole lot has changed. You can leave life right now, Marcus says. Let this determine what you do, say, and think. So he says to do everything, think everything as if it were the thought or action of a dying person, which is essentially what we are. Something that says we should always be doing is asking ourselves, is this essential? Because so many of the things that we do are just because we've always done them that way, because somebody has asked us to do it. Or maybe we don't even know why we do some things. But so ask yourself as you go throughout the day, is this essential to who I am? Is this what fulfills me? Is this what gives me joy? If this were my last week on earth, would this be what I was doing? Obviously, you need to think more longevity. You don't always have to be living like that, but it really just puts things in perspective. Like, is this what I actually enjoy doing? Like, life is short, so I can't be living for other people. You must live for yourself. So those were like the 5 or 6 themes, like the common themes that I drew from meditations. And I understand this was quite possibly one of the worst book reviews ever done. But the only way to figure it out is to do it, so that's why I did it. But if you found a lot of this stuff interesting, or any of it at all, you should read Meditations or check out Marcus Aurelius and just Stoicism in general. It's great philosophy that sort of helps with life.